The first 10 years in business before we hit traction about 9 or 10 months ago, it was hell, honestly. I had a lot of people doubting me. I had, man, lawsuit threats. We just passed 7 figures in revenue on the 14th of this year. So we crossed over 1 million 2 days ago for the year. And so my wife and I actually prayed together one night. We were just like, God, can we please work at a farmer's market booth together? I had actually quit my job coaching and competing to bag coffee at $9 an hour. They do every single 4-day roadshow. They do 6 figures in sales every single time. And every single time they roadshow, they set a record.
Thanks a lot for coming on the Shelf to Scale podcast. It's great to have you here, man.
Thank you so much, Dev. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Definitely. So maybe let's start off, Matt, with your origin story. Of course, see all the success that you've had and see where you are right now. But from when I was doing my research, I think you started back in 2015, like Hawaiian farmers markets, demoing products in farmers markets. So maybe just kind of walk through how does a farmers market stand turn into like a national demo and sort of brokerage operation per se.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm excited to share that with you guys. And we started, essentially back in 2015. Technically, I started as a brand ambassador, as like a contractor prior to that. But November 2015 is when we registered our business. And at the time, it was called Hawaiian Marketing and Demo Services. But honestly, our business, it started on a prayer. My wife and I was a competitive athlete and coach, and I was making good money doing that, martial arts and CrossFit, doing those two things. And I felt like God was calling me away from that. I was just coming into a relationship with Christ, Jesus. I believe he's the Messiah, but that's a conversation for another day. And I felt like God was calling me away from that industry because it was a bad one for my wife and future kids, right? And so my wife and I actually prayed together one night. We were just like, God, can we please work at a farmer's market booth together? That was our simple prayer, right? We didn't know how to pray at the time. We were basically little kids. And we flew back to Hawaii because we were doing our schooling there, and unpacked our bags at our new rental, went to our favorite date spot, which was Whole Foods Kahala, right? And this was before Amazon owned Whole Foods and all that. So it used to be like the go-to place. Like people would go there, you get like an organic bottle of wine, get some poke, because we were in Hawaii. They do a lot of poke out there, fresh cut fish caught right off the ocean. And so we get there and a guy's sampling out coffee, right? And prior to saying that prayer, I had actually quit my job coaching and competing to bag coffee at $9 an hour. So I took a step in faith, right? Making really good money as a, competitive coach and athlete to making $9 an hour bagging coffee because I felt like God was calling me that direction. And so I took a really big hit to the ego because I was like, man, I'm making good money. Now I'm doing $9 an hour bagging coffee, like entry level job. This is terrible, right? But it ended up being part of God's plan, in my opinion, because we stopped at this Whole Foods and the guy was sampling coffee, right? So I went up to him and I started talking to him about specialty coffee beans. And he's like, man, I like you and your wife. Dude, come meet us across the road at this cafe with my business partner. And I want to introduce you to my business partner. So like, sweet. He's like, I'll be there at like 2 or whenever he was getting off. So we show up and I go to shake his business partner's hand and introduce myself. And before I even say my name, say a single word, he's just like, wow, you guys would look so amazing at our farmer's market booth. And I was like, whoa, we just prayed a prayer 2 days ago to work together at a farmer's market booth. And now this guy is offering us a job. I didn't tell him this prayer. My wife didn't tell him this prayer. And this guy's offering us a job. I was like, that is 100% divine intervention. Like there's no accidents, right? So I was like, that's crazy. But it gets crazier, right? We show up for the first day at the farmer's market booth at Ala Moana Mall, right? Which is a really hard farmer's market to get a booth at. It's very competitive. Everybody's fighting for a space at that particular farmer's market. And we work one day for them. And these two business partners have a falling out, right? They're yelling at each other. It's bad, right? And what happens is they split the business up. And the one guy who offered us a job, he was the investor. So he was paying the other guy that I originally met. And he had the farmer's market booth. So he's like, look, I just lost my funding. I need you guys to run this farmer's market booth and make me some money while I go apply for jobs. Well, in 1 month of working for that guy, he found a job in New York and he gave us the farmer's market business. So, okay, now it's like, okay, we're given the job we asked for, and then we're given a business. And it's not easy to get a farmer's market business out there on Oahu. Everybody wants a spot at the farmer's market. It's popping, it's outdoors, a lot of growers, a lot of people making new CPG products. So our prayer literally was a simple prayer, like one sentence, and God gave us a job and then a business within a month, which is just mind boggling. And so what ends up happening is the guy who gave us a job emailed me from New York and said, hey, my clients who, you remember you saw me sampling coffee, they need help sampling at Whole Foods. Can you go sample for them? So I was like, sweet, let's do it, right? I need to pay for college. I need extra money. Let's go. So I go and sample for this coffee brand, right? Their name is Rusty's Hawaiian Coffee. You can look them up. Ka'u was a big up and coming coffee region back when like specialty coffee was blowing up. And so as I'm sampling coffee there, a macadamia nut farmer grower stops by and is like, yo, my mac nuts are right there on the shelf. Can you sample for me? And so I was like, sweet, let's do it. So I started sampling his stuff. That day, a cacao grower comes up and he's like, my chocolate bars are on the shelf. Can you sample for me? I was like, let's go. So now I got 3 clients, right? Then I met a tomato grower, had a salsa in Whole Foods, started sampling for them. I'm trying to remember, a macadamia nut grower who did macadamia nut butter hired us. And so from there, it just started blowing up, like all these Hawaiian brands. We got a relationship with the Department of Agriculture out there because we were supporting the Hawaiian Seal of Quality program. I'll go into like how we went mainland later, but it had to do with them. And essentially from there, we scaled up. And we were forced to move to the mainland mainly to be with a family member who was sick. And so that forced us to hire. And so that was in 2017. And so in 2017, we hired our first full-time person. We had other hires before that, but they were very part-time. And then we hired our first full-time person. Then I'm like, well, we got a full-time person in Hawaii. Let's scale to Maui. Let's scale to Idaho because that's where we moved. Let's scale to California. And so it's been a 10, 11-year process to get to where we're at. And finally, as of last year, we're really gaining some traction. We just passed 7 figures in revenue on the 14th of this year. So we crossed over 1 million 2 days ago for the year. And so we got another 5 months to, hopefully pass 2 million in rev.
Definitely. And that shows, I guess, a lot of people, they'll see the 1 million in revenue right now. They'll see the 2 million end of the year and they'd be like, they'll see the finished product or whatever, but they don't see the efforts that you and your wife have put in for 11 years at this point. Yeah, 11 years at this point. So
11 years. It's been a long journey and we got some crazy stories for sure.
Definitely. Matt, maybe let's start off over here with the sampling and demo side. I guess you've seen a crazy amount of brands, like an insane amount of brands from the shelf side, the demo side, the buyer meetings, all that kind of stuff. So I guess what's the fastest tell, or what are some signs that, a brand is really going to make it, or a brand is really like suited for sampling or not per se? Like, I guess, what are some of the things that you see that are like factors that are pretty, that you could talk about?
That's awesome. I think I kind of got 2 questions there, but they have the same answer, right? The first one is like, what brands are going to make it? Like, how can you spot one of those brands going to make it? And then what brands are suited for sampling and demos? And my first part of that answer is the same, in that is people who are thinking in decades, not in a year, right? I think most people get into CPG and they're like, I'm going to make $1 million by the end of the year. We're going to get acquired by Pepsi. It's going to be, they got these bold ambitions, and it's great to have bold ambitions. But the reality is most brands fail within the first couple of years, if not the first 3 years. And I've even seen some brands that really were doing very well and went under for some reason. Right. So it's a beast, the CPG space. So I think the main thing is that dedication to thinking 10 years instead of 1 year. And that applies to both success in CPG and also demos, because success in business, once again, it took us 10, 11 years to get here, and most people takes that long. You really got to be ready to fail so many times without any hope in sight and still go forward to succeed. And I know that's kind of like a challenging and kind of dark way to look at it, but it is the truth. I think if you want a multi-million-dollar company or a billion-dollar company or whatever you want, or you just want success as a business owner, it is not easy. It is very challenging. So you really got to be prepared to fight the fight. And so with the demos, that ties in too, because we just added something. We have a very small barrier to entry, but before we had basically no barrier to entry. You want to do 1 demo with us? Cool, we'll do it. The problem we ran into with those brands is they were just not ready for demos. You really, when you start doing your company, you kind of got to do everything yourself for 2 reasons. One, because revenue and cash flow is low. So you're just going to be so strapped. So you really shouldn't be investing in other people. And 2, you got to get some reps under your belt too. Like, you got to get in there and demo yourself to see, like, what is it like to sample? How do I sell people? What is a failed demo? What's a successful demo? And then also, it's kind of good to hire somebody in-house to do demos, because then you see, okay, now when I hire somebody to do demos, these are the kind of challenges I'm going to come up with. So then when you go to hire a demo team like ourselves, you've already gone through those challenges. So you know the challenges you're going to see with the demo team. Then you can pull that bigger lever, hire, 50 to 100 brand ambassadors to go do a big activation across the US. So our barrier to entry now is still small. It's 10 demos. And if a company is trying to work down our price on 10 demos, they're probably not ready, just simply because it's a relatively small amount of capital. And if they're really concerned about that amount of capital, it's going to be a headache for both of us. Like, we're not going to get the results you want, and you're also going to be super stressed, and I don't want that for you. I'd rather have you figure it out for a little bit, and then when you're ready, when you have that capital coming in regularly so you can afford to lose that capital, then you can come to us. Because they're not an overnight thing. They're a long-term investment. The brands that I see win with demos, once again, they're thinking in longer term increments, a year, 2 years, 3 years. And those brands that have the capital put down, they're way happier. And so I've got a lot of brands coming on this year and have already been on that are dropping, 6-figure plus on a contract, and they're extremely happy. And one thing that's important too is progressively over time, our demos get better for brands. So like, I've got a client, Alice Mushroom, they're on a 1-year contract with us this year. And we have data showing that our reps that do the demos over and over and over again, each month their sales increase. So we have actual data showing that the longer you do demos with us, we're going to improve over time. So yeah, long-term thinking, I think that's kind of the synopsized answers to your questions.
Definitely. And over there, on that point that you mentioned on, your reps getting better and better at selling, what does that exactly look like? Is it like they've got a better script because they understand the target, like the customer better? Or I guess, what does better kind of look like on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm going to answer it using like a jujitsu metaphor. So if any of your listeners like martial arts, I got like a broken pointer finger right now from jujitsu. But essentially in jujitsu, right, there's a concept. Jujitsu is like a grappling martial art, right? Throwing, tackling, choking, arm barring. One of the first black belts I trained under, his name is Tanner. He's the owner of SBA Sandpoint Ponderay here, and where I'm at. Simple concept. He says this, and I've heard a lot of other people say it. If you want to get better at jujitsu, you simply just need more time on the mats. That's it. The more you roll with people, the better you're going to get, right? And that's the same thing for sales and conversations. And one of the things I've learned in jujitsu is you can teach somebody something, like I can show them the transition from a mount to an arm bar, or how to get a single leg takedown and then, get to side control, right? I can teach them these skills, but the reality is, when you're rolling with somebody, there are things that happen that you can't really see. And so you really just have to be in the moment rolling with somebody for your brain to reprogram itself to be better. So yes, there are tactics in sales and in demos that help you to get better, 100%. But the reality is, when you're just talking to people over and over and over, and you're getting 100 repetitions of selling a brand to a customer, you're going to pick up little subconscious things that work. Like, for example, I might say something one way and accidentally say it another way, and a person laughs. So I get the person laughing, and then that's going to recondition my brain to now talk more in that way that gets people to laugh and open up to me, right? So yeah, I think just more repetitions, your brain kind of, talking to people, you're going to pick up on things subconsciously that are just going to make you better talking to people, right? So more repetitions, you simply just get better on both a conscious and a subconscious level. On top of that too, we do offer trainings both with our brands and internally with our team. And we do teach certain tactics. So like, there are certain tactics we teach. For example, we've got one called the Jedi mind trick, right? I had another person I was actually just on a podcast with, and we were talking about this. He said he used the same thing for his company, and we actually have titled it, we call it the Jedi mind trick. Essentially what you do is, at your table, I'm giving a pitch to a person that's walking by. After I've given them their sample, I'll pick up the product and put it in front of them with my hand open like this, and I'll point at the selling points on the bag or cup or whatever it is I'm selling. And the natural instinct of the person across the table is to take it out of your hand, right? So we call this the Jedi mind trick, because I'm like essentially handing it to them without being like, hey, hold this, right? And then as soon as it's in their hand, they're 10 times more likely to buy it, because they're either going to feel awkward putting it down, or you're just kind of taking them through the steps of the sales process, right? So Yeah, two things for your question. One, subconsciously, you just get better with reps because you pick up on little nuances that your subconscious mind can only understand. And then two, you do learn some new techniques. Maybe this opener works better. Maybe this hook works better. Maybe this closing line works better. Like the closing line for one brand is not going to be the same for another brand if you want the best pitch, right? If I'm pitching a protein soda versus like Alice Mushroom I mentioned, which is a medicinal mushroom chocolate with adaptogens, the closing line might not be the same. It likely won't be, right? Typically, you'll go in for the sale. You'll just be like, hey, if you'd like to buy one, feel free to grab one off the table and take it to the cash registers for purchase. That's kind of like your closing line. That works across the board. However, you might find with Alice, a slightly different closing line works.
Definitely, definitely. And because it's a great point. There's a lot of good points for, let's say, someone that's, in that under 10 demo stage per se right now. Because I guess our audience falls into two categories. One is those that would be able to do 10 demos with you, 10 plus, and others that are just kind of starting out per se. But for the people that are starting out, what do founders kind of always get wrong when they demo their products from like your experience and what you've seen? You've probably seen so many products and so many founders demo their products as well. So like, what do you think founders actually get wrong?
Yeah, so I'm going to bring up 3 points for that one because that's a phenomenal question. The first one being that, it goes back to that long-term thing, is that when you're doing demos, you really got to think long-term. It would be great if every single demo our brands profited. And if that were the case, 100% of all brands would sign up for demos and every brand would be doing demos right now because it'd be an automatic return, right? But really what you're looking at demos is you're looking at lift and total conversions, because lift is sales post demo, right? Lift means I do this marketing event and I make some sales then, but I'm also making sales 1 week, 2 week, 3 week after the fact. So it's a really great metric to measure. And then total conversions is important. So I always tell brands, if you have to take a loss on a demo because you're offering a promo, like for example, if I have a beverage brand, right, and their normal price on shelf is $3.99, right, for their beverage. If they can do a promo where it's like 2 for $5 and they take a loss for every sale, it's actually better to do that because I'm looking at getting those people to come back and buy, right? So repeat customers is everything. We're trying to create lifelong cheerleaders of your brand. We want those customers to keep coming back because, if you profit at a demo, that's awesome. Once again, cool, you're making money, but there's no guarantee they're coming back. Whereas if you give somebody an awesome deal and they love your brand, they get it hooked, they get multiple flavors, right? They're more likely to come back and buy again. That's where you're going to make the millions of dollars because you really got to be thinking in a year. Like, I was just looking at the brand Bloom, right? They might bring their product, a new SKU into like Walmart, for example, nationwide. They're looking at making money on that over the course of a year, right? Because they might pay a large sum of capital to get the best shelf placement. And then they're also doing promos and they're also doing field, marketing, and they're also doing, influencer marketing. So they're pouring all this money into it. They're not going to see a return until like the end of the year, right? And that's obviously hard with the startup brand. It's very hard because you got to eat, right? You got to pay your bills. And you don't just have endless capital to just burn through, but you really got to be thinking long term. You want repeat customers. That's what you want. So actually, I'll leave it right there. I think that's the most important thing that, startup brands should be thinking about. Actually, sorry, there's one more thing I want to bring up. The precise product placement in a store is a very hard thing to get down. So this is really important. So you take a brand like one of my clients is Laird Superfoods. Anybody knows Laird Hamilton, big wave surfer. He's got an awesome brand. We've been demoing with his company since they launched their first SKU, which was instant coffee creamers, right? Now they got all these crazy, they got bars, they got cold creamers that are shelf stable, or sorry, not shelf stable, they're fridged. They've got greens powders, red powders. They got a little bit of everything, right? So for them, they have so many SKUs that are rock stars. They can put the right SKU in the right store, and that's going to ensure they win. Startup brands struggle with this because you can't just launch 10 products at once. It's just impossible to do if you're a startup, right? But you really, if you want to win, you have to have the right product in the right store. Because to give you another example, I was looking at, what was the brand? Bum Energy. And they have a couple other lines underneath their portfolio. They can have one product in GNC and one product in Walmart, and they're different. So for example, in GNC, they're going to have more units, or like they'll have a bigger product size, right? So they might have like 30 serving size in a pre-workout at GNC. Whereas at Walmart, they might have a 20 serving pre-workout because Walmart shoppers are looking for value, right? And then on top of that, GNC is like 85%, I think is what it is, male customers. So their branding on that packaging is going to be more male focused, but it's literally the exact same product at Walmart and GNC, right? So they put millions of dollars into the right product in the right location. And that is something that startup brands are really going to struggle with. So what I recommend is like, let's say you're launching a lion's mane cold brew coffee, right? It's kind of a cool category. It's coming out right now. You're only probably going to have one or two SKUs. You know, you might have a black and then like a latte, right? You got to find which retailer is going to match best with that product. You got to find that retailer. So, and then when you find that retailer, demoing becomes easier, right? Promos become easier. Everything becomes easier because you have the right product store fit. And that's a very hard thing to do at the beginning, but I think you should be looking for that. A lot of brands want to go big. They want to get the Sprouts or the Whole Foods or the Albertsons or the this, that, or the other thing. Your product might not be perfectly optimized for that chain yet, right? And so then if you screw that one up, you're going to have to spend the next 2 years rebuilding a new thing and repitching that buyer. So do a lot of research on your target customer, find out where they shop, and that's where you want to put your product first. And then absolutely crush it at sales there. Then you can come back with some data, you'll come back with some cash flow, and then you can work on your next SKU to launch at your next location.
And what about, I guess, the ones that are, like they've had success in DTC and now they want to go straight like into their first few stores per se? I'm sure you've probably worked with brands like that as well. For them as well, I'm guessing they have a better idea of their target customer. Would that transition be easier compared to if you're just going straight to retail, I guess?
100%. Yeah. So I think that's the ideal approach for most brands. Now, every brand's a little different. So, I can't say that's going to work for 100% of brands, but I would say 90% of CPG brands should go ecom first, in my opinion. You got slightly higher margins. You can kind of focus, you can do more things for quote free, because it's expensive to go to a retailer. I mean, you got to get the product there. So there's shipping costs or delivery costs or distribution costs. They're typically going to want discounts on the shelf. So not only do you have a thinner margin, but then you also have a promo, right? And then you have to do demos and things like that. So 100%, I think ecom is the way to go first. And that will help you unlock your target customer very well. And then hopefully you can build a few products out too and see which ones do really well. And then you can figure out which ones are going to go really well into which retailers, right? So yeah, I think ecom, absolutely 100% every brand should do that first, typically.
Definitely. And Matt, from what you've seen, when let's say a brand comes to you and you kind of feel like their product placement isn't right, do you kind of guide them along the path of like, listen, like, the product placement itself is suffering. Even if we demo, it's not going to have the impact that you want? Or is it like, let's just try to demo because a demo you may see that lift and that an increase in velocity per se?
Yeah, so that's a really nuanced question, but a very good one. And I'm learning this over, a decade. It's very hard to know which product is going to do well on which shelf, right? Because man, there are people that charge millions of dollars to help you figure that out. So I mentioned some of these brands, Bum Nutrition, Bloom, they're spending a lot of money on this type of stuff. And a lot of other brands are doing that as well. So it is a superpower to know which product is going to do well on which shelf. I've definitely gotten better over a decade, right? I can kind of see what brands are going to do well. I've had some brands that in the past I thought they would do well and they didn't. But now looking back, I'm like, obviously that brand didn't do well. I should have known that. But it's a very complex thing to know which product's going to do well on which shelf. So a couple things with that. First of all, before we even get into that, and demos, we can talk about that. Like, should you do demos if it's not quite the perfect fit? Because here's the thing. There's some products where it's like, let's say we score you a 10 out of 10, right, of product fit for this store. Maybe you're like a 9 out of 10 on this store and maybe a 7 out of 10 here and a 2 out of 10 here, right? So the 2 out of 10, you're probably screwed no matter what. Whereas like a 7+ out of 10, demos might be a good option to kind of still generate some cash flow there because no product is perfect on the shelf. Like every product has room for improvement. So having perfect product fit is never going to be 100%, but you want to get as close to there as possible. So it's a nuanced answer to your question. It's more of like a scale, like at what point are demos worth it, right? So I want to get better at that. I'm getting better at it every day. I have advised some people not to do demos. In fact, I had one recently. I've got a business coach and he referred somebody to me And I was really straight up with them about doing demos at a particular store location because their product is like organic. It's like superfood. It's natural. But this grocery chain is kind of more conventional. And I was like, look, I've done demos here for natural chains. I'm concerned that we're going to do demos here and you're going to burn through a lot of capital and it won't pay off. So they still want to proceed. So what we did is I offered them like a super discount and we're just going to do a handful first and see how it goes. So yeah, so typically I'll try my best to advise brands because I am getting better at seeing those types of things. And I also understand too that long-term relationships are everything. Like we make the most money off repeat clients. Let's just be real. And every single business knows that, it's easier to maintain a client than it is to sell a new one, right? Selling a new one has a higher acquisition cost than a repeat customer getting a new contract out of them. So I have learned that it's better to turn a contract down than to go through the headache of burning a bridge, right? And there's an energy cost to it too, which people need to think about. Revenue cost is one thing, energy cost is a whole nother thing. And as you get higher up in business, energy cost is almost more valuable than the revenue, because you can do a lot with energy. It's a lever you can pull to do a lot of sales. So we typically try to advise whether or not people should demo at a particular location if it's not the right product fit.
And once I guess someone you figure out that yes, this is the right this the brand, we should go ahead with demos. Demo does happen in the end. After a demo, I guess, what numbers should a founder ask you to know that it would? I know we spoke about lift, we spoke about also total conversions, but are there any other numbers you recommend a founder should be asking someone like yourself to know if it's success or not?
Yeah, 100%. So once again, conversions, I think, is the number one metric to measure. Lift, if you can measure it, is a great one because then it's like, is this profitable? Lift is probably the best way to measure that because it's like, at a demo, you're not always going to profit. That's just the reality of it. Demos are expensive. It's expensive to have an A player go sell your product. But if they get 20 conversions or 30 conversions or whatever, every product's different. Like if I have a $50 product versus a $2 product, I'm obviously going to get more conversions with the $2 product. But the more conversions you get typically is going to translate into more repeat customers. So that's where a lift you can actually track like, okay, if we got 50 conversions, you should see lift. And if you don't, there's another problem with your product, right? Because here's another thing too, right? If you were to have me demo, I've done tens of thousands of demos. I've set countless company records. I've gone in and made a profit at demos, and then there was no lift afterwards, right? And that automatically tells you it's probably not a me problem. It's probably a brand or a product placement or a price, one of those types of problems, right? So yeah, you want to measure conversions for sure. That's like number one. If you're getting a double digits conversions for most products, that's pretty good because most of those people will come back and buy, right? Lift is good because then you're tracking profit. Like, are we making money? Obviously, when you're looking at your P&L reports and, profit loss statements, all that kind of stuff, you got to be making money. If you're not making money, it's probably not a good thing, right? So if you're not making money at that particular retail where you're investing demo dollars, that's probably going to be a problem. There was one more metric I wanted to talk about. Gosh, it's slipping my head. I'll have to think about it when it comes back. I'll bring it back up. But there was one more that I wanted to mention.
No worries. Another thing, Matt, kind of like going from here, segueing from here was that. But briefly, want to talk about Costco roadshows because this comes up a lot with some of the founders that I speak with. It's its own animal, of course. Volumes, demand. The demands that Costco has by itself. I guess from your experience, like, what does a brand need to have in place before they take an opportunity like that? Because that's a step in itself.
Awesome question. It just reminded me of the other metric I wanted to talk about. Okay, so the metric I was going to talk about, and it ties into this Costco Roadshow thing, and when you're ready for it, is where are you ranked in your category selling at that store? So I am working with both of the better for you protein soda brands at Sprouts right now. We're doing activations for them for Sprouts nationwide, and they're the number one and number two selling beverages right now at Sprouts. So they have more sales than any other beverage brand at Sprouts right now. So you can go take a look. I'm not going to announce them, but yeah, the two biggest protein soda brands right now, they're outpacing every single other beverage on Sprouts shelves right now, and we're doing their activations for them. So that was the other metric I wanted to let your listeners know to measure, because you want to be number one in your category long term. Short term, it's obviously tough, but if you're not like in the top 4 or 5 beverages on a shelf for your category, you're going to struggle. It's going to be a battle. It's an uphill battle. And that's harder said than done. But that's what you should always be shooting for, is number one. And that ties into these Costco roadshows, because I have some clients and some colleagues that have set the record for number one sales at a roadshow at Costco. And I have one colleague too that I've talked to with extensively, and they do every single 4-day roadshow. They do six figures in sales every single time. And every single time they roadshow, they set a record. So they have every single, I don't know how long this has been going on for. It's at least a year. And once again, I can't name all these companies, but they literally set the record every single time. So that means when they do their next roadshow, theoretically, they should set their own record again, right? And they're doing, six figures in a weekend at a Costco. Crazy, right? So Costco roadshows are absolutely an animal, and they're different than demos, or different than other retailers. When you're thinking about doing a Costco roadshow versus a demo is a one-day event. You can move them around, easy to reschedule, lower cost, lower risk. It's a lot easier and less goes into doing a single demo, right? A roadshow is scheduled. You have to do these dates guaranteed, and it's a lot of money. You're talking LTL freight to get product to the store is expensive, thousands of dollars. You're talking pallets of product, thousands of dollars. You're talking now the roadshow, thousands of dollars probably. Yeah, and then if you don't win, you don't get a rotation, right? If you don't get the sales that Costco wants at your roadshow, you don't get a rotation. So when you're thinking about Costco roadshows, you need to put everything you can into it. And one of the things I've learned from these brands that do number one sales is that they give it their all. Okay. There's different strategies for each, but there are some strategies that I've seen that are similar. And the first one is if you can have a full staff of people at a roadshow, that's your best opportunity. The more people, the merrier. I do know that technically Costco is limiting. I don't want to butcher this. I've heard this from my clients. They're limiting it to like four people at a roadshow at a time. So that is what I'm hearing. I, of course, have clients and colleagues, and we've done quite a bit more than that. I've seen people showing up with like 10 people at a roadshow, and they're the ones setting the records. So the more the merrier. I know for a fact across the board that wins at a Costco roadshow. And once again, that's different than a regular demo. A demo, you don't have a 4-day window to make sales. So you can spread it out. Like if you're doing Sprouts demos, I can demo 100 stores on different days and it's going to be great. We're going to do a lot of movement, right? Costco roadshows, you have to like concentrate that down to 4 days or 5 days. So if you're going to start doing Costco, I recommend you have some money saved up before you go in, because you want to win. Because if you win, you get the rotation. And if you get the rotation, you get pallets and pallets sold of your product. So it's a higher risk, high return activation. More goes up front, and you want to do it right. So yeah, more capital up front. You want a bigger team for Costco roadshows. We've got some strategies that are tried and true that can save you money, but also get the results. And yeah, give it your all. Like Costco roadshows are no joke, but you have to give it everything you've got.
Definitely. That's its own beast in itself, for sure. Matt, this was great. I know we're running close to time. One thing I do want to ask you at the end is that something I like asking all the guests is that what do you wish you'd known? What do you wish you'd known at the first day of starting when you were back in Hawaii at that farmer's market that you wish you would have gone and told your younger self, basically?
Man, there's a lot of things, but probably just the simplest one of like, you're going to make it, and this is going to be worth all the effort. The first 10 years in business before we hit traction about 9 or 10 months ago, it was hell, honestly. I knew deep down somewhere inside of my soul that we were going to make it to this point, but I also didn't know with the other 99% of myself. So I was constantly under stress. I had a lot of people doubting me. I had people essentially gossiping about me. I had, lawsuit threats. I've had just tons of problems. It's been a really, really hard journey, but if I could just go back and tell myself like, hey, you're going to make it, and here's some proof, like here's some actual numbers of you making it, and here's what your team's going to look like, that would be the thing that would have just helped, because it's hard, when you're building a business and you're failing more than you're succeeding. People are doubting you. The money's not coming in like you think it should. You're working 10 times harder than employees are working, career type employees, and people are bragging to you about how much money they're making as an employee. It's very tough. So that would be the main thing, is just like for your listeners, if you're in a startup, or, you've been in a startup, or you're thinking of going into a startup, you can do it. You will win. You just got to stay in the game. Stay in the game long enough, and eventually you will win, and you're going to get those exponential gains that people see that don't stay in the game.
Definitely. You've inspired me, my friend. I mean, I'm feeling pumped after this, and I think yeah, I could feel the emotion in what you were saying. So I can relate to that to a certain extent. So, and your of course your faith is commendable as well. That you've been able to stay strong for all these years, for 11 years, and now you're seeing a success. And I'm hoping that next year when we have a chat again, you'll be at 4 million, 6 million, 8 million, 10 million. So I'm hoping to see you rack up those numbers. And again, thanks a lot for coming to the podcast, Matt. Also, please plug your company as well. Where can people find you and where can people reach out to you as well?
100%, man. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you so much. 10. So, Local Demo Service is our website, Local Demo Service. Check us out.com. And we are rebranding right now. So in 2 to 4 months, we should have a brand new website, brand new decks, brand new everything. LinkedIn, check me out, Matthew Kubick. Kubick, Kubick is how you spell my last name. Instagram, we're making some big moves there. We just did a Sprouts giveaway too. So definitely hop on our Instagram because we're going to start doing a giveaway minimum once a month. You could get $100 to Sprouts or Amazon, or we might do some other chains. I don't know. We're also on TikTok now. We got a YouTube channel. If you want to learn some sales skills in CPG, check out our YouTube channel. It's at Local Demo Service on YouTube. And we have some actual tactical skills you can implement to improve your sales. Every CPG brand should go watch those 3 videos we have up there. The rest of our videos are unlisted. Yeah, but Local Demo Service, just look us up. We're ranking number 1 on Google for a lot of search terms. So if you Google Local Demo Service, you'll probably find us.
Basic. So we'll link all those in the show notes as well. But again, Matt, this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dev. Appreciate you, man. God bless. Talk soon.